All righty. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start the webinar.
Go ahead and share my screen.
Well, hello. We are very excited to be here today. Lisa Bennett with Careforth is with us today, and she is going to be explaining how to safely age at home with a family caregiver and all the different benefits that can come from that, and programs that I would say very few people even know exist. So Lisa, I'm going to let you kind of introduce yourself and introduce Careforth. And I need from you, before we're done here eventually, I need you to give me a new logo because I've still got your Caregiver Homes logo on Life's Copilot. So
we definitely
I'm going to turn it over
to
you and let you kind of talk about us here.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Finally, we got it all figured out. So
yeah. Sorry about that. Not so sure what happened there.
I don't know either.
Well, hi. I'm Lisa Bennett. I'm the Director of Sales and Community Partnerships with Careforth, formerly known as Caregiver Homes. So always call that out at the beginning because we've been known as Caregiver Homes within the state and some of our other states of which we serve for quite some time. So just want to make sure that everybody knows we're still the same organization, same people, same everything. Just went through a little bit of a kind of transition with bringing multiple brands that we had all together under one place. So so definitely glad to be here as representing the new name that is Careforth. So we provide structured family caregiving as a A&D waiver service within the state and have been doing so since 2013 in Indiana. I've actually been with the organization for about 7 years now. My background, I spent most of my career working in inpatient skilled nursing facilities, as well as some time within the health system. So, I grabbed a hold of the Careforth mission early on because of kind of the unique model of care to be able to assist with our aging population and the increasing amount of caregivers and the workforce that's going to be needed to care for those individuals in the home safely over time. So I got just a few slides that I'll be able to kind of provide to you guys today, really just diving into, the need for caregivers and why we continue to focus as an organization on what we call the caregiver nation. And then also kind of a unique model of care and some questions based around that, because, with structured family caregiving being in the state since 2013, it's becoming more widely known across Indiana. But however, there's still a lot of kind of questions around, this service versus other supports that can be provided in the home based upon, individual circumstances. The good thing is that the state is really aware of the need to increase access to care for home and community-based services and are really working on ways to improve not only service delivery, but also access and eligibility for those services in the community. So hopefully this will be informative for you. We'll just give you kind of a little taste of things, and you'll have my contact information as a follow-up to the call as well, if you'd like to reach out for any individual questions or circumstances. So Jim, I stopped sharing, so I'm going to
Oh, okay, you did? All right.
Can you see my screen now?
I can see you fine. Before you were up in the corner, but anyway, so do you want to share, or do you want me to share for you?
Nope, I got it.
Okay.
Now, is it back up?
Yeah, it's fine. Everything's good.
Okay. Looks good. Okay, you can still hear me okay, right?
Oh yeah, you're on my screen, you're off to the right. So yeah.
Okay. All right, great. All right. Okay, so let's dive in. So I gave we use this, as I said earlier, Caregiver Nation. So what is that? There continues to be, from the national landscape, continued emphasis and focus on caregivers, not only professional caregivers within the workforce, but also what we might call lay caregivers. So family members, essentially, that are stepping up to provide care in the home, who may be quitting a job or may still be working. And what does that community look like that wraps around our loved ones who need care and support in the community? So this number is growing. These numbers actually were from a 2015 AARP report. However, a lot has changed since 2015. So we have, this number is definitely increased, and it will be increasing even in the coming years. So if we look at, these numbers and just focus on Indiana, in Indiana alone, there's over 800,000 family caregivers. And if you place a value on the caregivers care being provided in the community, that would estimate to be about $9.5 billion. So these numbers are huge, right? Because it really shows that not only do we have, healthcare workers who are providing care in the community and helping to support our aged or disabled loved ones, but we also have family members, and those family members need support too. Over time, from a national statistic, it shows that caregivers spend on average about 4.6 years as a caregiver, and also continue to work about 20.4 hours a week as a caregiver within that period of time. So, and again, these numbers are growing. So it really just shows the multitude of, people that are stepping up to provide care in the home. And these are individuals that sometimes do the care without any resources. So what impact can we make if we really jump in and wrap our arms around these caregivers in this, what we call the caregiver nation? So this next slide kind of shows the value of what we can do with that family caregiver involvement if we start supporting them, the impact that can have on our healthcare outcomes as a whole, as well as just really helping with overall quality of life for the family. So you see that, individuals requiring assistance with long-term care services is only going to continue to increase. And, the amount of spend really within our healthcare system today is astronomical. But then you have caregivers, and caregivers, if you paid them, that would be even more than what we're spending with regard to Medicaid, because that's how many caregivers are really in it to support their loved ones in the community. But, statistics show that if we really wrap our arms around those caregivers, and if those caregivers are involved in the community for that aged or disabled loved one, it can help with prevention of ER visits. It can help with decreasing falls in the home. It can help with just overall quality of life and lower healthcare utilization to assist that family and really just having, the necessary supports within the home to really maintain for a longer period of time within the home while you're supporting the caregiver who also is supporting their loved one. So looking at all this information, Caregiver Homes, formerly Caregiver Homes, now Careforth, really wanted to create a model, not just to wrap our arms around that care recipient or that aged or disabled loved one, but to think about what are the needs of that caregiver, that lay caregiver who's in the home and really providing the care. Because if they're not able to continue providing care in the home, then their loved one is not going to be able to stay in the home. And they really, they struggle, right? Caregiving is tough. Anybody who's ever been in a caregiving role has seen a caregiving role, right? We all know that caregiving is tough. There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of demands, there's a lot of things that comes into it. And really caregivers do it because they love the person and it's out of their heart, but they may not have the skill set or the tools to be able to provide the care. So with structured family caregiving, again, which is a aged and disabled waiver resource, as well as we're contracted with our programs of all-inclusive care for the elderly that are our PACE programs that are scattered across the state, as well as through some of the waivers that provide services to individuals with disabilities as well. So the program, in order for somebody to qualify, they must meet level of care to be otherwise in a nursing facility. So these are nursing facility eligible individuals that choose to waive their ability to move into a nursing facility because they want to maintain in the community in their own home or in their loved one's home. Through that individual would be eligible for Medicaid waiver because their care needs, right, outweigh their assets that they have coming in to the home. And this individual really wants to remain in the home and has an eligible and willing caregiver to be there and be there caring for them. So we like to do graphics. If any of you are visual, I'm a very visual person. So I really like to look at this graphic because it kind of helps to put in perspective all of the moving pieces that come into this structured family caregiving model of care. So we have, in order for somebody to be eligible for Medicaid waiver, through the Asian Disabled waiver in the state, you have these state managed care case management agencies. So if you're from Central Indiana, you might be familiar with SACOA, right? So they are still there to help to oversee the environment and set up services and supports for individuals in the home. We're one of those services that they then would, provide and set up for that individual. So we remain in constant communication with them as a full collaborative care team, right? Because we want to make sure they know everything that we're doing in the home and how we're working with that individual. And also there's a lot of value, right, in that care collaboration piece to better support a caregiver and their loved one in the community, making sure everybody's on the same page. So within this model of care, you have, we say the consumer, but that's really the care recipient in the home. And then you have their live-in caregiver. That live-in caregiver can be any family member. It can be a spouse. It can be a power of attorney, a legal guardian, any relation. It can also be somebody who's not a family member, right? So it can be a friend that really has, best interest of that loved one and really has taken on the care needs within the household. The only person it cannot be is a parent caring for a minor child, so somebody under the age of 18. And so within that household, between those two, you then also have our designated care team members. So for supports for that family, our care team is an RN, and we have a social service designee. So those two disciplines really help with all-encompassing care within the home for whatever the needs are that that family faces. So upon somebody coming into the program, we help to develop a person-centered plan of care and understand what are the goals of that household. Maybe that care recipient struggles with getting out of the house. And it's really a goal for that family to improve quality of life for that individual. They want to be able to get outside of the house, right? To maybe go to see a movie, to maybe go through a walk in the park or something. So what are some of the things that we need to work on with that caregiver pertaining to, transferring? How can we make sure that they're appropriately, and safely able to get into the car so they can, go places outside of the home? So it's all based around not only clinical needs, but what are some of those needs within the home that really would help to improve overall quality for the person receiving care and the caregiver. And that care team is there to develop those plans of care to help them to meet those goals within the home, as well as just to be there for support, to be there to listen, to coach them in situations that they come across that they really don't know how to manage. We have a lot of caregivers or a lot of, care recipients in the home who may have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia. And maybe they have a night where they're sundowning and they have increased behaviors, and the caregiver has just been 2 nights in a row and we can't sleep and I don't know what to do. What can our team do to just sit there and listen, and then also give them some coaching and some advice that are clinically proven and resources to help them to navigate through those changes in care, those episodes that they come across. So that care team is really specifically there to coach and be, a resource to that family caregiver in, situations where they really are not sure what to do, and help them to overall just improve in their caregiving journey. This designated care team reviews daily notes with that caregiver. So we're in touch with the caregiver daily to know the care that's being provided in the home and identify when there's any changes or adverse events that happen. Maybe there was a fall, maybe there was a change in appetite and what they've been eating, things like that. So we review those daily notes, and we also will visit the home, just because the biggest thing for us is to have a relationship with that caregiver, right? So we really want to make sure that, and we have a relationship with the caregiver so they can trust and feel confident in the care and that, or the commitment that we have to provide care for them and listen to them. And then and all of that's driven through, we do have kind of a technology piece within this for us to stay in constant communication with the caregiver and the time of which it's best for them to communicate, right? Because oftentimes if you're caregiving throughout the day, you may not have time to take a phone call. And so maybe they're at the end of the day when their loved one goes to bed is when they have time to kind of download everything. So can they send a chat through our technology to just say, hey, it was a rough day. I have this question. Can you help me with this? So that's how we stay just in communication in the time in which they really, really need us. And then the other component is of this is that there is a daily stipend, rate that this caregiver receives, because oftentimes, some of these families may be living off of scarce resources. And so we want to make sure, especially if that caregiver had to quit a job in order to provide care in the home, they need that financial assistance in order to continue bringing resources to pay for food, to pay for, bills and all that stuff. So the program will provide that assistance to them for the care that they're providing, within the home. And a final note too on this slide, before we move on to the next. So, as I said at the beginning, we're really focused on just the quality of care that's being delivered. And we were the first home and community-based service provider in the nation who received NCQA accreditation. So this is an accrediting body that really does audits and checks the quality of program delivery. And so, we're really happy to tout that we have NCQA accreditation for case management with a focus in long-term services and supports, because that really speaks to the level of involvement that our care teams have and how we have families that come into service with us and then turn out to be happier, healthier, and able to stay and remain in the community for a longer period of time. So as I said at the beginning, I'm not going to spend the whole time talking specifically about structured family caregiving, but, and there's a lot more components just in terms, of qualifications and things that we could get into. But a lot of that is just, if you have a need as a family caregiver, every situation is so different. So we like to walk through those situations hand in hand with you. So anytime, a caregiver is in the community and just says, I'm struggling, right? My loved one's been in and out of the hospital. I don't have any support in the home. I'm stressed out. I just don't know if I can do it anymore. That's a prime time to be able to seek support, such as structured family caregiving, and seeing what the program can do for you to really eliminate. The goal is to eliminate, that level of stress and that burnout that happens for caregivers over time. So make sure that you're being proactive, essentially, and understanding that, we understand, you're the environment that you're in, and we want to be able to be there to support you. And there are resources and things available for you as a caregiver that you want to tap into a little bit sooner in the journey rather than later in the journey where you're at your wit's end and at the point of moving to a nursing facility or a different path. So now, as we talk about all those resources that might be available for an individual, a big thing that comes up is, hourly care programs are another resource that can be used in the home, where a caregiver comes into the home and you're paying them hourly to be able to provide assistance with activities of daily living. So you saw in the previous slide. So those would be, housekeeping, helping with ambulation, walking, bathing, dressing, all those types of things that an individual needs for quality of life, in the home, day in, day out. So you can have a family member who lives in the home and provides that care, or you can have somebody that comes from outside the home to provide that care and is paid hourly. So there's a difference, and sometimes, families may benefit from that hourly care, which, sometimes is called attendant care, and some may benefit more so than structured family caregiving. So weighing your options between the two, to understand what are all the resources and the programs that are available to you. So hopefully this gives you a little bit more information pertaining to those differences between the two types of service options that you could look at. So on the left-hand side, you'll see structured family caregiving, and then on the right, you'll see attendant care. So with structured family caregiving, it is a daily stipend rate, which is non-taxed. So that just means whatever rate that you're set at from the beginning upon entering into the program, that's the rate that you're going to be getting. There's no taxes or anything taken out, because that the caregiver within structured family caregiving is essentially considered contracted. So not an employee of the agency, but more so contracted. And there's a reason why, when you look at tax regulations and everything, the caregiver, burden and adult foster care and all that, for why this government really says, okay, we don't need to take any taxes out of this. This is a stipend rate. That's why we call it a stipend, right? So it's a daily rate that you get as for all the days that you remain in service for that month. So it's paid out biweekly, and there's no hourly reporting or anything like that that has to be completed. When you look at attendant care, you're paid for the hours of work that you complete. So there's a time card. It's a fixed hourly rate, and it's taxed. So it's like, you're going to a normal, job, and you're clocking in and you're clocking out, and then you're paid for that set of hours, and then there's taxes that are taken out of that on the back end. So when you're looking at comparison of, income and things like that, just pay attention to those differences if you're trying to calculate what it is that you're going to be taking in for that month, so that you can kind of see the clear apples to apples comparison. Another difference between the two is the point of residence. So we do ask for proof of residency with structured family caregiving. And in the program, the caregiver and the care recipient must live in the same home. There are situations, we do a formal assessment at the beginning where we do a home assessment. And, there's situations where you may have a wall in between, apartments, right? Where a caregiver lives in one apartment, the consumer, the care recipient lives in the other. Those are situations that we look at case by case. But ultimately, it is a live-in caregiver situation. Versus with attendant care, you're not residing together. Typically, your caregiver is going to reside outside the home for the most part. And that's why it's, too, there's a daily stipend rate, because that caregiver who's living there is, even though the caregiver may not be by the side of that care recipient 24/7, they're responsible 24/7 for the care needs of that individual, because you never know when a care need is going to come up, right? And so just making sure that they're there and they're accessible for their loved one. And then again, with the hourly care, attendant care, again, you're not residing together. You're essentially clocking in for the amount of hours you're doing, and then you're clocking out. And then when you look at kind of the additional components outside of that payment structure and that residence piece, structured family caregiving tends to have a little bit more benefits within, holistically within the household than what you might see with attendant care. So with structured family caregiving, you have access to that professional care team, right? So you're engaging with that care team on a regular basis. They're there to support you, answer questions, really just be there as a resource for you. And that's typically something you may not see under attendant care. You're not going to have a designated care team that is responsive through that technology piece and engaging in a daily manner. Also within structured family caregiving, we have that communication component to make sure that caregivers are able to access our care teams on a regular basis. We provide those care teams through that platform, provide that coaching and that training assistance, but also will provide some clinical oversight just to make sure, if they notice, okay, the care recipient, excuse me, is starting to decline or some changes happen within the home, our RN is going to jump in and maybe say, okay, I think we need to get you to the emergency room, or, let's call your doctor and we need to get you scheduled for an appointment as soon as we can. So there's going to be some clinical oversight through the RN just pertaining to the clinical needs that may be presented within that household. And then, additional things that fall under that. So the educational resources that we give to that caregiver. So constantly coaching that caregiver on how to be the best caregiver they can be, regardless as to what type of diagnosis and things that they're facing within the home. That care team is also going to assist with care collaboration across providers, right? So they are staying engaged with the waiver case manager, right? So that other person we talked about at the beginning, who is overall just monitoring the resources and things in the home. And then finally, focus with the caregiver on just self-care holistically. So making sure that we're constantly pushing the caregiver to seek respite, to, seek other types of caregiver support, have their own goals in place so that they can focus on self-care. So those are just kind of some of the differences that you may see and you want to consider as you're looking at what service is going to be most appropriate for me. Now, as we move away from that, I always have an FAQ set up within this to really focus on what are some of those common questions that we have within structured family caregiving, because, I would say the majority of people are more familiar with that hourly care service, where you have somebody outside coming in, providing care. Structured family caregiving is a newer program, right? Even though it's been around since 2013, that's still 10 years in the grand scheme of things. It's still a pretty short period of time. So, excuse me. So I like to build in some questions that we've, gone through over time as we talk to families and our partners regarding this service. So, may a structured family caregiving caregiver also work a job outside the home? The answer is yes. So we do, built into that initial assessment that we do as we're bringing somebody new on service, we always talk to them about, what are your goals, and do you work a job outside the home? If you do, what do we need to have set up to help to provide care for that individual during those hours when you're away at work? So we work on a plan. If it's an alone time assessment, if there's another alternate caregiver that can step in, there's things that we work into that to make sure that that caregiver can continue to work outside the home, because that only means that they're going to have some additional resources coming into the home to support that family. Other question we get often is what type of respite is available to the primary caregiver in structured family caregiving. So within structured family caregiving, you are able to have, if you do have a working caregiver, then that caregiver or that care recipient can utilize adult day services. So we do see a lot of families that there's an adult day service available in their area, then maybe they go to the adult day center during the hours of which their loved one or their caregiver is at work. So that's definitely a nice complementary of services. Also, we always within that assessment will do, a holistic review of who are all the supports that exist within your community, right? Do you have other family members that live inside the home? Are there other family members or friends that live, down the road that can step in the times when the primary caregiver needs to step away? So we pay attention to, and write a plan based upon all those supports specific to that household. May a consumer receive both structured family caregiving and Medicare or Medicaid PA services? So this is really, if somebody has, probably should have shifted the question a little bit, but if somebody has structured family caregiving, can they have other services in the home, such as like skilled home health care? And the answer is yes. You can have skilled home health care if you have some sort of need, because the main thing is just that the structured family caregiving primary caregiver living in the home, they're not able to do hands-on care. However, if there is a hands-on care, meaning, assistance with a trach, right, or a feeding tube or something that would be considered like a highly, skilled clinical need, the caregiver cannot, do some of those hands-on things. However, we do nicely collaborate with other services to be able to make sure those needs are met in the home. And that's where we would lean into, like, if the consumer or the care recipient had a Medicare benefit, right? Can we look at Medicaid prior authorization hours with the waiver case manager to see what options might be available to make sure those care needs are met in support of, in addition to what that caregiver is doing. This next question is really based around an assessment that the waiver case manager does. So there is a level of service assessment that's done at the beginning when somebody is being set up with their waiver services. And that there's a level 1, level 2, level 3. Those levels really dictate the level of pay, essentially that stipend rate and the care that's going to be provided in the home. So we always make a note, that because we get the question, right, about what is the stipend rate, how much would I be receiving? All of that is dictated based upon this level of service assessment that case manager through SACOA or whoever the area agency on aging is in your area, based upon that assessment that they complete. And then the remaining 2 questions here really are focused around that component that we just mentioned around skilled care, right? So may a caregiver administer medications? As a part of that topic of skilled care, we always say when it comes to skilled care, the caregiver may be the consumer's hands, but they cannot be the consumer's brain, right? So if the consumer is fully capable of, making their own decisions and they know what their medication regimen is, then that caregiver or that consumer or that care recipient can say, I need this medication at this time. Can you just open this pill bottle for me? Okay. But if that individual is not able to make their own, decisions and they don't have an understanding of when to take what medication, that caregiver is probably going to have to rely upon prepackaged medication delivery. There's the, pill dispensers that a lot of our families use as well. So there's ways of making sure that med administration happens, correctly, and other resources we can put in place to support that. And then the same thing applies with other types of needs, such as a feeding tube, catheter care is another one that we run into, trachs, all of that as well. So if somebody has severe, clinical level of care. They have, high need within the home. That's not going to disqualify you from being able to access benefits such as structured family caregiving, but we do have to have that conversation upon assessment to look holistically at that environment to see what are going to be the most appropriate, additional services that we need to get set up to support you in the home. So those are the kind of the FAQs I built into that. And Jim, I'm going to just move to the last slide here and just want to kind of open it up and see, if you have additional questions that we want to dive into that I can kind of broaden a little bit more, if there's maybe any questions from our audience. Oh, I think you might be muted. Still don't hear you.
Okay, now I got it. I coughed and I turned the thing off. But anyway, your common questions turns out to covered a lot of the ones I had. So I was going to ask about respite. I was going to ask about some of these different things. One of the things I did want to bring up is, you're going through your stats early on, and there was some things on there that I thought were interesting. I don't know if I got these stats from a dementia friends class or what, but some of the things that blew me away as I have heard these things is that 1 in 3 households today have someone in that household that is being cared for by a family member or what have you. Okay, that not necessarily over 50, but someone has, 1 in 3 has, is that's going on. Another one that I heard that I thought was really amazing was that 1 in 6 millennials are full-time caregivers for a older family member. So those are things. And then the other one was that 65% of the caregivers pass before the person they're caring for because of the 24-hour stress. That's one of the reasons I love your program, is that it is so focused on the caregiver as well as the care recipient.
Yeah, those are fantastic stats. Thank you for bringing those up, because 100%, the goal of the program is to eliminate what we call that caregiver burden, even though I don't like that name, but eliminate caregiver burnout, right? Because typically what happens is somebody goes into another level of care, has a decline in their health status because the caregiver is just really no longer able to do it anymore. Or maybe doesn't have the resources or the understanding. They have it in their heart to do a good job. They just don't really know because they may not have a medical background or, have the awareness. So by engaging a family member, engaging that family caregiver and really empowering them, it helps to, extend their ability to stay within the community. And the number, I always share this stat too, because I think it speaks to the value of supporting the caregiver. The average length of stay for somebody to be in our program is over 3 years. And that means that we're prolonging the ability, somebody's transition into another level of care. And the number one reason for somebody discharged from our program is because they're passing away in the home environment. So that means that, the majority, I think 90% of people prefer to remain in the community, in their home. And this program helps them to be able to do so, to age in place, to, have a peaceful passing. And if it gets to that point, then we do work with hospice, agencies, and we'll make referrals and collaborate with services that can really make that a peaceful, transition, and helping to just support that family holistically, no matter what stage of that disease and that journey they are in.
Now, you just mentioned the 3-year average, program stay. Okay, so one thing I was going to ask earlier was, you were talking about the stipend was determined, by the care level. Does that change through that 3-year process, or can it change during that 3-year process, or is it fixed from day one?
So it can definitely change if the care needs for that individual progresses, right? So we may, and that's why we always say, get into services and start having the conversation sooner rather than later, as opposed to waiting for an emergency. Because somebody may enter into our service that we would consider a level 1 assessment rate. And, that caregiver then at that level 1, which is kind of a lower acuity, lower need, that caregiver is going to get a baseline understanding of what their future is going to hold, right? that if it's a progressive disease, if it's a disease like dementia, right, they're going to start getting that education and that awareness around that disease process. That's going to help to prepare them for the future, right? So then that disease will start to progress. So they may turn into a level 2, and then, toward the end, they may start to be a level 3, which is a high need individual, where maybe they're not able to, walk around on their own, maybe a little bit more bedbound than what we've seen with the level 1. So yeah, so that will progress. It's not stagnant. It changes based upon the continued assessment of the individual and what their needs are within the household. And we all know that can change, in an instant.
Well, yeah, and this is such a value to so many times you'll see someone that decides to, basically wrap their whole life around taking care of their loved one. And so they are out of the job force, or they're, because of that, or they, and in fact, I have an upcoming panel that we're doing where I have an elder law attorney is going to be talking about how to protect yourself. I've run across, in my job as carrying transitions, I go in and help clean out like estates and help sell stuff off and whatever. So I see the aftermath a lot of these circumstances. And occasionally you run into a situation where a daughter or somebody has moved in with mom or dad to take care of them. They didn't get paid. They just basically lived off, they, what have you. So all of a sudden they were doing that so long that they didn't even qualify for Social Security for themselves, so it's, there's things that people don't think about that can have real long-term, consequences. So that's, I love the fact that you guys are there, again, supporting that caregiver, because so many times that person is so, a lot of times I think the people that gravitate towards that are the sibling or whatever that are the most selfless to begin with. And so they have a tendency not to pay attention to their own needs and how to stay well and how to get into respite and how to deal with an adult day, whatever, so they can disconnect for that period of time.
Yeah. The goal, the number one kind of profile, I guess, if you will, of a caregiver that we see is really a daughter who's caring for a parent in the home. And so we help to make sure that daughter can be a daughter, because often what we see is when a caregiver steps in to care for a loved one, they now become just a caregiver, that they are removed, or they don't feel as connected to just being a daughter and being, there and connected in the way of once they once were, because they're having to get intimately involved with all of those other needs that their loved one has. So we try to help to eliminate, and help them to still feel that connection with their loved one, and help them to just be a daughter again.
Well, I think that your app, and I assume it's phone calls as well with that communication process with the team. I can't imagine how valuable that would be, because it would be, not only just because, oh my God, how do I do this? And maybe a plan for the day, or, kind of a reassurance that what I did was right, or maybe we can tweak it this way tomorrow, or getting that, or maybe just a shoulder to cry on. I suppose those things would all be part of that program. Is that not correct? Or
that's correct. Yeah. Which I'll give you an example. So within one of our families, they're engaging in, not in Indiana, but this is a situation or, circumstances that we hear come up often, but it's a real life situation. So we had a coach who was working with a brother who was actually a caregiver for his sister, and his sister had high needs, but that brother also worked full time. So he would wake up, tend to her needs, go to work, come home, tend to her needs, and go to bed. And so there was one point in time, I think he'd been in our program maybe for a year, and he sent a note through our technology that said, I can't do this anymore, and presented some sort of, suicidal ideation, to our care team. So immediately our care team picked up the phone and called him and talked him down from everything, made sure that he was safe, that the consumer, that care recipient was safe, coached them on, how to appropriately, solve for what it is that he's feeling, gave him all the resources that he needed, and really saved him from what could have been a horrible path, and met him in the time of when he really most needed it. So it was really just a simple message through that technology in a time, and because, sometimes the caregiver may not have felt comfortable picking up the phone and calling and actually speaking those words, but they were, that had that much need in that moment that they at least sent a message to just alert our care team so that they could really step in and make sure to support him in the time when he needed it. So that technology really does a lot to just bridge that gap and be present with that person in the time in which they need us most.
You're talking about that is your care team available 24/7 or?
They are not.
Okay.
So it is during their, working hours.
Okay.
However, that if there's something like that comes up, we do have protocol in place for emergency type situations, right? So that happened to come through, during the normal business hours, but should that have came through after business hours, all of those alerts would come through. And we always have somebody that's kind of monitoring and will, spark up with any, emergency episode or things that do occur.
Okay, well, I was because I could imagine someone having those moments in the middle of the night, type thing with just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's busy and going full throttle. Yep.
Mhm. So, well, that's. I mean, it's an amazing program. I'm so excited about you guys being members with Life's Copilot for one thing, and then also, different things there. Just to give people, if they don't know about Life's Copilot, Caring Transitions Ending North. That's what we do. That's how we that's how we pay the bills, and that's how to move people, pack people, sell, help sell estate sales, all that kind of stuff. But we see such a need being out there and getting to know people like yourself and what providers are out there for people, that we just really felt like there was not a good resource for people to find this information. So we've created a Life's Copilot, and then we do these, twice a month, where we bring someone in that's an expert. So you're not getting information from someone's barber's uncle. Okay, you're getting it from that expert, so we can try to get this information out to the public for free to the consumer and the and what have you. So this is brought to you by Caring Transitions, plus people like yourself and your companies that are members with Life's Copilot. So I really appreciate it on all levels there for that. So that's where that is. I do need your logo, by the way, so I can get you updated. But it's,
Yep.
anything you'd like to make sure, how does someone get a hold of you, or how do you want to, what's the best way of somebody trying to get going?
So I'll go ahead and bring this up on the screen
Okay.
again. So you have all of, our contact information. So for, if you're interested in the service or have any questions about the program, you can either call our care advisory unit. You can also visit us at careforth.com, but then you also have my email here as well. And please, I welcome anybody to reach out to me directly if you have a specific situation that you want to talk through and you're working to navigate. So feel free to, reach out to us at any of these places, and we'll be more than happy to assist, to listen, to just kind of see what we can do to help out.
Lisa, thank you so much for sharing with us today. So,
Thank you, Jim, for having us.
All righty. Well, we will talk soon. Send me that logo.
All right.
Okay. All righty.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.